Hello everyone and welcome to another lockdown interview. Today I'm joined by Tim Elverson, the team owner and sport director of British Continental side Canyon DHB Soreen, who has widely become one of the most competitive and exciting Continental teams since their inception in 2017. Tim's team have been a dominant force with multiple wins in the Tour Series and boast a number of stage race victories, most recently in the form of Tour of Italia this year, and they notably became the first Continental side to win a stage in the Tour de Yorkshire with previous lockdown interview guest Harry Tanfield in 2018. So lots to discuss. So without further ado, here is the interview with Tim Elverson. Good morning, Tim. How are you?
Oh yeah, very well, thanks, Scott. One of my first Skype interviews, so excuse it when I'm looking in the wrong direction.
You're the owner and the sports director of Canyon DHB powered by Soreen.
Yeah.
How have you so far when I've done these interviews, it's always been like from the perspective of the rider and it's always been concerning their training, but you are in charge of 18 riders and staff, so you must be a lot busier than just a rider kind of trying to keep themselves in shape.
Yeah, I don't think riders are busy. They don't realise they're not busy, but they think they're really busy when they've got to squeeze in 6 hours into a sort of, 10-hour window. But they spend the rest of their time sitting on the sofa planning the next ride or the next gym session. So, no, I mean, I have my own businesses as well as the team. So I'm used to busy. I like busy. I'm fortunate with the team. I've got some good staff that have been with me a long time as well. Simon's very good now, and he also helps. He coaches riders the same as I coach riders, but it also, because of that, it allows us to understand their balance better for a selection point of view and who needs to work on what. So we can get through that side of the team quite quickly because we've got a good understanding of everybody. And then the social media side of the team and the managing sponsors' aspirations, etc. Then I've got Hugh who does social media and photos, and Chloe who's my PA for my actual business as well, and she sort of basically integrates everything and to give me less to deal with, and then by managing it well, we can lie through it really. I mean, yeah, it's busy, and I start my days early, I end them late, but that's intentional. If I didn't have the team, I would fill the time with something else. So I'm not really one for downtime. So yeah, it's good. It's a good busy. It's far better when we're actually racing and we're racing busy and preparing for races and race plans. I mean, race plans, how we're going to race is, and who we're going to use in the race and how we're going to use them is the stuff I like, and managing the guys to get the best out of them and understanding who's going to suit what best, I think is one of the team's strengths. And Simon's also got very good at that in recent years, but he also deals with a lot of the logistics for our European travel as well. So yeah, it's busy from a manager owner point of view, but I think I've got real good crew, so we get the job done with less people than we should. I think a lot of people think our budget is far higher than it actually is, because we're able to do so many races and so much, and it appears very slick, etc. But I think it's because there's a few people working very hard.
So what was the race program that you had like at the start before the lockdown?
It was brilliant. I can't remember the exact days, but we were in the 70s. It may even have been more, but I think 70s of UCI racing. And we've already done something like 14 days before the lockdown. So we got cracking early. We've had 4 UCI podiums this year, I think it is. We've won a 2.1 stage race, which is a big win for a Conti team, Tour of Antalya, Turkey. Top 20 in Tour of Mallorca. We're currently leading the Holland Cup. We won the Holland Cup last year. So because we had a big calendar and we started early, we have already got some results. I mean, we're sat 13th in the European ranking at the minute. But yeah, we've had we had a calendar that was going to see us doing multiple Point Pro and Point 1 races pretty much every week. We didn't have that many Point 2s. We've had a few under 23s. The reason for bringing Thomas Main in as a specialist was to give us enough under 23s to be able to do some under 23 racing, and which was something that this year I had less under 23s than I really wanted to, than I like to have. But because I was very keen to push the envelope of becoming a Pro Conti team, I stacked our team in a way that when we had a split calendar, we were going to, no matter what the level was, we were going to both races with winning as the priority. Whereas in previous years, I felt if we had a split calendar, I've always had one squad that was going to whatever race it was with the ability to win, that the other one was possibly picking up some experience, and a top 10 was a good result. But this year I wanted to win as much as possible in order to be able to look at stepping to Pro Conti. But with the world being what it is right now, which nobody could have predicted, I think there's going to be a lot of realigning with aspirations stroke survival, because the reality of it is, it's not, I think a lot of people in cycling like the doom and gloom that cycling might be in trouble, etc. But the reality is very few businesses aren't going to be affected. It's got nothing to do with cycling. It's the world, and and it was even previous to the pandemic. People were, cycling is struggling for sponsors, cycling, and you massively struggle. But I know a lot of people in a lot of other sports, in motorsports, have the equal struggles. So it's it's just how it is. So we'll have to realign now. I mean, the sad news of Tour of Britain going is a big loss, because a lot of the sponsors, a lot of their marketing was on the basis that you're doing Tour of Yorkshire and the Tour of Britain, because that's the big TV time, and we've got very good history in both races across the last 4 years. So our expectations are high, and without them, I'm going to have to manage the expectations of the sponsors now, and that may or may not have a knock-on effect next year.
Yeah, because this year you also have a quite very competitive squad. You've got Alex Peters, a former Sky rider, coming. You've got Jerome, who's a Belgian rider with a lot of experience, and you've got Brenton Jones as well, who's ridden for a Pro Conti team. So you're really strengthening your team with, as you said, aspirations of becoming Pro Conti.
Yeah, I've had a good squad every year. I've been fortunate that people have believed in our process, and I've had a good team. Even in my last few years at Pedal Heaven, we had a good team because we were doing good things with the riders, and they wanted to be part of it. But last year, I had a few races where I came away frustrated because on face value we had results, but they weren't wins, or they weren't quite finished off in the right way. And some of that was, our management decision-making process that we learned from and would be better for this year. And some of that was just not having the riders that were either hungry enough, aggressive enough, or had the ability. And I felt they were the areas we need to strengthen. So I was very specific about what I wanted to improve this year in order to be able to. I wanted to regularly beat Pro Conti teams because we were better, not because we got a lucky break. And and I wanted to be a pain in the arse of the World Tour teams as well. So, and I believe Brenton, with the right mindset and the right balance in his life, is a world-class sprinter. And he has already shown that in camp to me. He's already shown it in the one race we did, that he lunged for the line with Decker, and it looked like he got it, but he didn't, by literally hundredths of a second. And Decker's already had multiple podiums, against World Tour riders this year, and he's world class. So I think Brenton had already proved to me he was the right choice and the right man for the job. Jerome has been a real good balance around the team. We haven't seen what he's capable of for us because I know he's a bit of a slow burner, and he was doing a load of racing to get him going ready for the late March, April period, which is where he was really targeting, and we had a target block of about 7 races that he was targeting to win. And I feel he's proven that he's a race winner, and his attitude was lovely, and he's really blended in with the team. And it's just good for someone that's been a pro Conti team at the level he has for as many years as he had, in effect, to drop to a Conti team. Although I use that hesitantly because I think we work really hard to get everything right. But he, you never heard any complaints from him. He just gets on with it and really is mucked in with the lads, and he's been an asset, even though we haven't seen the best of him yet. And Alex was a work in progress. He obviously was phenomenal. Probably his big problem is the fact he's so damn talented, and getting the balance of his personal aspirations, because I think he thinks and feels he could win everything. So then if he's not quite going well enough to win everything, or on the training camp he takes a kick in, he then has to manage that, which is something he's openly spoken about. But he's shown on the camps, and he's working really hard at the moment, actually. I think he'll be one that's really gutted by Tour of Britain, because that was something he had as a personal target. And we've been working for a second half of season for him. He was never going to be a player in the first half of the year. I was going to pull him in and out for doing jobs, but I was never expecting performances from him. It was all about building him. And then he was going to hopefully come good second half of the year, when he realised that he fitted in with the team, and it was about the team, and he didn't have to take the pressure of it just being about Alex Peters. So I think he was also going to be an asset as we go through. But now it's obviously very hard to understand if we'll even race, to be honest. I don't know. I don't understand the pandemic, etc. But I mean, in my mind, until we don't have the social distance, I don't know how you can have a bunch.
Do you know anything about, we've heard that the UCI came out with a revised World Tour calendar. Is there anything for Conti teams?
Isn't there? The Conti team one, and the World Ladies team, I believe, is coming out today. But I mean, obviously, if they can pull that calendar off, then it'll be great for cycling. And in actual fact, there won't be masses of losses, because there's so much in there. And a lot of the races that have been cancelled for us in March and April, and actually a few new ones, we've accepted for August, September, October. And if they happen, we'll actually still have a very big season. But I think everything that's out there has got the caveat that it's based on what the government of the local country is saying at the time. And I don't think any of us can predict where that's going to be.
Talking about invites, being a Continental team, it's not like the World Tour where you're kind of mandatory calendar. How does it really work? You get invites from different races, or do you have to contact the race organizer and present them with your squad and results, or how does it work?
One, and sort of half of year two, that's exactly what you do. You contact all the races you'd like to do. You send in a presentation of who you are. If you've got one or two names that might get you in, you'll mention that. And then if you've got results worth talking about, you'll also mention that. Last year was we were basically getting invited back to the races we wanted to get back to from the year before, and then we'd apply for ones we want, and then 9 times out of 10 we'd get in them. But we finished in the top 30 last year in the rankings, and there's only so many Conti teams in front of us, so it's got a bit easier. But still, for the big races, even like Tour of Yorkshire, which you think was obvious, right? You still have to apply for it, and you still, and then you wait to be invited. You've got to show your interest, and then you wait to be invited. So it's the system that's run through the UCI for the big races, and then all the others you deal direct with the promoters. Simon tends to deal with a lot of that. I did it in my first couple of years, but Simon's taken hold of that, and he's got to know a lot of the promoters well now, so I leave him to it, and he's got a real good handle on that. And we sit down at the beginning of the year and decide what we want the calendar to look like, and he goes out and tries to make it happen.
How important is the Tour Series in your planning?
It's a funny one because logistically it's a bit of a pain because of what UCI races are on at the same time that we want to do, and you're on the road for a long period of time for, in effect, if there's 10 rounds, 10 hours worth of racing. So you're on the road for 3 weeks to do 10 hours worth of racing. That said, that also equates to 5 hours worth of TV time. And in our case, we get a lot of that TV time because we're trying to control the races. So from a sponsor's point of view, it's invaluable. I do have a personal affiliation with it. I really like it. I don't know if I'm in the minority, but I really like the Tour Series. I like the process. I like the crowd being close. I like the short, sharp race because I like racing, and it's where I started when I was running Pedal Heaven, and it was the first time we were able to be competitive to, at the time, the big Conti teams, and then gradually we worked our way up through. And obviously we've won it 2 years in a row. I believe the year before, had it not been pretty much wet every round, and we had a tyre issue that year, we would have been close that year as well. So I was really looking forward. I had set my team up this year with trying to get 3 in a row. So I'm annoyed it hasn't happened, and it's clearly not going to happen now. But, 3 in a row won't sound the same 18, 19, 21. But, it'll mean the same.
The British Continental scene has lost a few big players like JTL Condor and Madison Genesis and One Pro Cycling. How has that kind of affected British cycling?
I don't think it looks great when teams come and go, and it's a shame when established teams come and go. In reality, the majority of the riders stay around and they just appear in another form of teams. So the competition on the road is fundamentally the same. Obviously, they're not set up necessarily as well organised, and JLT with John were obviously particularly well organised, but that's fundamentally John rather than the riders. But because those riders were good riders and he organised them well, then they were obviously one of the main teams. But when those teams go, those riders, some retire, but the ones that retire, generally it means they probably weren't as competitive in their last year anyway. And that's not quite true in some cases, but the majority of the good younger guys will keep going in a different format. So that they might be at one of the new Conti teams or whatever. So the scene changes because it looks different because you change a few names of teams, but the riders often are the same. It is a shame though when they don't last for a period. And obviously Madison and JLT were 2 that have been around for a fair while. But if you look back across history, look back across World Tour teams, you look at the World Tour, 8 years ago. There's not actually that many teams that are exactly the same. There is guys that have been running teams for a long time, but fundamentally they have to change how they look or they are because budget dictates it. It's not like football teams that their name is the club or whatever and it continues. It'd be nice if it was, but we don't gain revenue in the same way. So you have to morph where the sponsors are.
One Pro Cycling, they kind of did what you're talking about, where they had success at Conti level and then they went up to Pro Continental. Have you kind of looked at how they did it and thought what you could do better?
No, I've looked at what they did, and they did it very quickly. I think it was their year 2 or was it year 3? I think it was. I can't remember. Year 3, I think. But they did it pretty quickly. But I think they didn't do anything wrong in terms of the way they were racing and the riders they had. But I presume they just didn't have a sponsor that was multiple years. I think maybe they had enough to do the 1 year and then they were hoping to pick something up if they had a good year. But which unfortunately is sometimes how you have to play it. But I think obviously that becomes dangerous because you can't go pro Conti racing without having more than $1 million. So you can't do it on a nudge. You've got to get the money in. So I don't think they did a lot wrong, but they maybe just didn't have a 2 or 3 year deal laid out beforehand. I think the only thing I've been talking to some potential partners, and you have people out there looking for funds for you, but I'm only interested if I can put something together that's a 3-year deal, so that we're not in it in year one, making a lot of progress in year one, but ultimately it's a big step and then falling apart at the end because you just can't find the sponsors. So I was only interested if we can do a multi-year deal that we can then build into it and then, hopefully become a stabilised, established team. But you've got to find the right partner, and it's not easy. And with World Tour teams being vulnerable, anyone that might be there probably can get themselves onto a World Tour team for less money now. So it's going to be even harder, I think.
How would things change for you as a team if you did go pro Conti? Like, would it be more staff? Obviously, bigger races?
The racing obviously would be increased. But you're only talking of removing some of the national and point 2 races and adding in some big key races. Some of the middle ground races we already do now. There'll be a little bit more flyaway racing, and you can look to do more of that, so that you can have one calendar here with the appropriate vehicles, and then the other race can be a flyaway. You need more staff. You need more full-time staff. In terms of setup, organisation, workshop, storage, vehicle space, etc., we've got all of that. I've got ideas to make a better base and have a tighter setup that actually in the long run could save money, but it would take money on the outset to get it put together. But it is just. But I've got Alexander Blaine, who does de-essing for us part-time, ex-pro French, very, very good. I've got a guy called Anders, Danish, ex-rider, very good. I can easily bring people in on more of a full-time basis if you have the budget. I mean, Simon does do all the racing, and he's full-time with the team, and he's excellent. He would be able to step up and take up a lot of the slack. So I think we've almost got the people in place. It's just about paying them to be full-time. Same as Soigneurs. I've got 2 or 3 very good ones we work with. If I was able to put them on a bigger retainer to keep them for the year rather than in and out, that would be no problem. You just need a few drivers. I've got 2 other mechanics that we use part-time along with our full-time. We just make another, 1 or 2 of them full-time. It's just money, really. I think the majority of the structure we could cope with. And some of the races are actually easier when they're the bigger ones because they're slightly better organised with slightly, tighter hotels, easier logistics. So some of it becomes easier. It is literally just a financial thing.
So going back to one of probably your high points of your team's history, how was the 2018 Tour of Yorkshire?
Is that the one Harry won on?
Yeah.
They all blend into one. Yeah, it's good. I mean, obviously, it was a really good individual day, and Harry did really well. And it's a difficult one because I think, we did race that day to try and win the stage. Harry would tell you, we sat down before it and said, there's a small chance they're going to get this wrong. It was early in the year. They'd only recently brought team sizes down by a rider, which meant if you looked at the races running up to the Tour of Yorkshire, there was a lot of brakes were sticking because the sprinting teams were mistiming the catch, and it was because they were all a man shorter. And I'd seen that, so I was really aware that we needed to have the right rider in the break every day in case it stuck. And that particular day was very rolly and flat. It wasn't a hilly day. Suited Harry perfectly. We knew he was going well. He's not got a sprint. He's got a very strong finish at the end of a tough day out. So Harry was the right man, and we worked really hard to get him in the break. He then did well in the break. And when we were watching the sprints for the prems in the race, which ultimately was the original target, was to try and take a jersey on day 1 as you wore it the day 2, we'd realised he was one of the quickest ones there. He had to be careful because Ali Slater, if they were alongside each other, would probably have beaten him, but I was confident as long as he came from behind him, he could get him. So in the car from about 20k out, I was telling him, I think this is going to stick. Stop working hard, really make it look like you're working, but don't. And we were doing that all the way through, and he started to panic around about 7k, and I was saying to him, look, really I don't think this is going to catch. Don't go overworking. You need to be fresh. You've got to be the one that can do this. And then I think it was about 5K, we suddenly thought this isn't going to get caught. So I must admit, between 20 and 10, I did think it was still going to get caught. I was just trying to play the game with him to make sure we were ready if it didn't. But I didn't think it was going to stick. And then all of a sudden, I think it was around about 11K to 8K, they just didn't make any progress at all. And suddenly it was, hang on. So yeah, that was a phenomenal moment in the car because it was our first really big win. I mean, obviously, Opie got a podium the year before, so we already had some success in TDY. But winning the stage was pretty phenomenal. But more importantly, because it was stage one, we also wore the leader's jersey the next day. So the next day was so damn hard. We really wanted to do the right thing and ride at the front for a little while just to show William, but it just went off so hard. And then Harry punched it. And then there was a crash with the car in the peloton when Harry was getting back in. And everything that could have gone wrong went wrong on day two. So, I mean, it took Alex Patton out. He hit the car real badly. It pulled onto the closed circuit. So that was, we nearly lost. Harry nearly missed the time cut because of it, and it was a mental day. But yeah, I mean, it was a special moment, and I'm sure one Harry will never forget. And it kind of gave him then the impetus to go on and have a really good season. He was good all year, but the lads were good. I mean, every year they always give me 110%. So if we're not good enough, it's because I've not got the right riders for the race or the right plan, because they always give me top effort.
That quite neatly sums up this interview. Thanks very much for your time, Tim. It's been really enjoyable to listen to the cycling world from a different angle than the riders.
Yeah, cool. Cheers.
Thanks. That's it for this lockdown interview with Tim. If you're new here, why not check out the interview with one of his riders in the form of track star Charlie Tanfield, or another team owner and the son of Eddie Merckx, Axel Merckx. And as always, thank you for watching and see you next time.